This episode of the Manufacturing Culture Podcast is brought to you by TCO Strategies. A company is only as good as its employees, and a healthy workplace culture is essential to attracting and retaining those employees. TCO Strategies can help you assess the impact of your company's people strategies on the employee experience. We combine industry best practices, a proven system, and a knowledge of our clients to build a customized cultural roadmap. Invest in your team and create a healthy workplace culture with TCO Strategies. Visit tcostrategies.com. That's tcostrategies.com to learn more. Hello, and welcome to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast, where we explore the people and company cultures that shape the manufacturing industry. I want to do a little housekeeping before I introduce this week's guest. The manufacturing culture movement has absolutely exploded over the last couple of weeks. I'm absolutely thrilled that you all have enjoyed the conversations that we've had so far. First, I have a favor to ask of you who have listened to the podcast. Please, please, please rate and review the show on whatever platform you're listening to it on. These podcast platforms have some funky algorithm that promotes a podcast with the most ratings and reviews. So give the show 5 stars and type into the comments whatever you like. Just say you're listening or you're following instructions or whatever you need. It's not for me. It's not for my ego. It's to promote the cultural movement in the manufacturing industry. Second, I have heard all the requests to have a video tour accompany the podcast. I'm working on something that I hope to launch sometime in late of the second quarter or early in Q3. Stay tuned for that. Last, if you want to be an executive producer of the show and have me read your name at the end of each episode, go to the producer tab on the Manufacturing Culture website. That is manufacturingculturepodcast.com. Okay, so now let's get into the reason why you all are here. Sit back, relax, and join us on this week's journey. Our guest today is Bill Padnos, the Executive Director of the National Tooling and Machining Association Foundation. Bill is responsible for programs such as the National Robotics League program and the association's education and training programs. He works to advocate for policies and funding that support workforce development and promotes manufacturing as a career option for youth. He has a background in nonprofit management and has received a Bachelor of Science degree in marketing from Indiana University and credentials as a certified meeting professional and graduate of the Institution for Organization Management. He is a fellow of Aspen Institute's 2014 Sector Skills Academy. In this podcast, we will delve into Bill's unique perspective on culture in the manufacturing industry and how he's working to shape its future. Welcome, Bill Padnos. How are you, sir?
I am great, James. This is wonderful to be here, and I always enjoy our conversations.
Yeah, I've known you, Bill, for a couple of years, more than a couple, I guess. I guess we're going on 6 or 7 at this point. And we've always had a lot of fun, some great conversations. So I'm really excited for what we're going to talk about today.
Same here.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Bill, usually on the Manufacturing Culture podcast, I'm speaking with leaders of manufacturing facilities, shops. We've got some plastic injection, some food manufacturing in the future. You're our first guest that isn't a leader of a specific organization, but you are a leader in manufacturing, specifically in the workforce development space. So why don't you tell us about how culture has shaped your professional journey so far and some of the companies that you've worked for?
Well, thank you. And one of the reasons why I wanted to get a chance for us to talk, I mean, it goes back to one of my first jobs when I worked as account executive over at the Center for Association Growth, which is actually an association management company based in Chicago. And when I first started, I did not really have experience at all in the associations that we were managing.
Hmm.
But the people that hired me, Carl Wangman, him especially, saw something in me, just like he saw with something for everyone that was working there, and wanted to get the best out of everybody. And the
Hmm.
culture, what I learned from him is he really truly believed that education and training was important. And he went out of his way to making sure that I went and I got my certification for being a meeting professional, that I made sure I got my Institute for Organizational Management through the US Chamber. He was making sure I was at the local association um, conferences, meetings, that I was out there in front and meeting with people. He did not have any worry that I was going to get all this training and then leave. He
Yeah.
saw as an investment, and because of that investment, he knew that I would be invested in them. I mean, and sure enough, I was there for 6 years. The only reason why I'm no longer working there was because we moved from Chicago to Pittsburgh. I always say the only reason why I left there and I would still be there is because of that fact. Because I felt so much appreciation and I felt so much, as I going back to it, is that investment.
Yeah.
And he invested in all of us and he made us all feel a part of the family, part of the ownership, a part of, making decisions. There was, he was the boss, but he made sure that we were all involved and we all appreciate it. And I would recommend to anybody to go work for the Wangman family because of that fact and because of how much he just, I'm trying to say what the best way of being able to say this was, but there was just such an appreciation of who we were that we came every day to help him, to work with him. And he showed that back to us. And it was a small company, but we always had what we needed. And he
Yeah.
never micromanaged us. The only time he ever would do that is he would do a little bit behind the scenes. He would push us a little bit, but he would make sure that we would be out there in the community. He was not afraid of having us out there in the community because he knew that would reflect well on his organization.
It sounds like not only did he have a culture that encouraged education, but he also had a culture that you weren't afraid to take risks and potentially fail, even, right? Is that
That's
a true
completely
statement?
that's completely the way to put it. I mean, when I started there in 2000, I was coming off of being a membership director at a community center. And all of a
Okay.
sudden, he puts me in to run $1 million event at a top level resort
Yeah.
for people that are involved in mergers and acquisitions. And he just said, "You're going to do it." And during our first meeting, I remember when we did a site visit, um, he would not he would not ask a question, and make it. He wanted me to be the person that was leading all the meetings, even though this is the first time I've ever done a job description. This is the first time I've ever done a site inspection.
Sure.
But he wanted me to be leading it. He gave me some pointers. He gave me some things of what to ask for, which is what I did. But if I didn't ask a question, he would actually say, "I think Bill meant to say this." So, or I think that, Bill was going to say this. So he never contradicted me. He helped me along. So I learned. And so that first year when I'm running this conference, it was a learning experience for me, but I still had ownership of what was going on. And it was, to me, he showed that faith in me. And I try that with anybody that works for me. I want to be able to give them the resources and tools to succeed, but I don't want to necessarily tell them step by step everything they need to do, because they need to figure that out for themselves as well. And I
Yeah,
think that's an important component of culture.
absolutely. So with that being such a solid foundation, Bill, and your role with the NTMA and the foundation, NRL, et cetera, since you joined that specific association, you've seen a lot of machine shops, a lot of the member companies of the NTMA out there. Uh, Talk to us a little bit about the cultures that you see out in your travels, and what you've experienced with the members and with the manufacturing industry as a whole, out in your experience.
Well, first it started actually the first time I ever really was at a manufacturing facility. I remember it was February of 2013. I was interviewing for the position to be the executive director of the Southwestern Pennsylvania Bots IQ program, which is the robotics program that's associated with NTMA's National Robotics League. And so I
Uh-huh.
was just going to be in charge of the Pittsburgh program. And my first tour of a facility was with Greg Chambers. I didn't know at the time that Greg Chambers is the chairman of NIMS. I just thought he's this really great guy who's on this committee who's going to show me around and we're going to talk so I can learn a little bit more about manufacturing.
Yeah.
It turned into an hour and a half tour of Oberg Industries. Now, Oberg is a big facility, but it's not an hour and a half tour facilities unless someone's really showing you around and showing you what's happening, what's going on. I mean, it's everything from showing the safety component of saying, here is the pathway we need to follow, and how it's done, how every machine is a special Oberg green that was created for them by PPG. He talking to everybody, along the way, saying hi to them, um, introducing, saying what they're doing. And then toward the end of our tour, we had been talking. I explained my wife was during our conversation, my wife was a pharmacist at Children's Hospital. And he goes, oh, by the way, we're doing something on this machine that I think your wife is going to feel, it's going to be really important. It was like creating this painless needle that they were working on and trying to manufacture. So all of a sudden he then related something to me
Wow.
that he can, this is what your wife does. Oh, by the way, this is what we're doing here at Oberg that's going to help out your wife and it's going to help out everybody, if we can create this needle that's painless and it's fine. I'm sorry if I just said some trade secrets. I do apologize. But that was in 2013, so that's long ago. So I remember I left that tour. I called my wife on the phone. I said, I want this job. I don't care what it is, anything going on. This is amazing, how cool this is, how great Greg was. And to this day, I always tell him that.
Yeah.
Just how engaging, if this is what I can do to get students to be interested in these types of careers and work at places like this, why would I want to be a part? Why wouldn't I want to be a part of this? And it just started my passion for what I was doing. And luckily, during the years, I've had a chance to go visit a lot of manufacturing facilities and seen different things about how they are, why people would want to come work for them.
All right. So, Bill, one of the things that I've noticed as I have been in shops, and you alluded to this with Oberg, is when there's guests in a facility, I can always tell a general idea of how the culture is by simply looking at the machine operators when I walk in onto the shop floor. Are they focused on their shoes or on the piece of material in front of them? Or do they turn around and engage with the guests? Right? If they're focused on their shoes, they're really that typically that leads to a shop that doesn't have the healthiest of cultures. But if they're engaging guests as they come in, that's something that typically leads me to believe that there's a healthy shop culture. How many shops have you seen that kind of healthy culture in? I mean, tell us some more stories about this.
I would say I've seen a lot of them, which is great because part of my job was getting students to get tours into manufacturing facilities. And there's one facility I will say that's not that far from where I live here in Pittsburgh, where I went down and I met with the people and I was walking around, and some of the machinists still had like pinup calendars in
Hmm.
their workspaces. And I said to myself, I'm never going to tell a school like my local Fox Chapel school, hey, come down and visit here. They're about 10 minutes away. I'm not going to do that because look at, it's, what are they going to see? The females that are going to be interested in potentially being a part of this industry are going to see a pinup of Pam Anderson. We don't want to see that.
No.
But what we want to see is I remember going to this facility in York, and everyone who had with their tool their tool chest and stuff, they all, when you open it up, there was all pictures of their family, and they were young, and there's pictures of their family. That's what you want people to see, and you want that encouragement because there's that personal component. But also, it's not just even the engagement, I think, of the machinists when they're coming to talk, because they're not sure whether or not they should be talking to the guests. But it's when I see the owner or whoever is taking me around personally engaging with all the people that we're looking at. They're not just showing me the machine and what that person's doing, but they're almost introduced me to the person they're talking to, or they say something personally about them. So say, hey, how's everything going? What's happening? Knowing something about their lives. I always say that Roger Sustar over at Freedon Corporation
Yeah.
up in Northeast Ohio, I've always impressed with him whenever I'm up there in his facility. He knows everybody that's around there. He knows all of them. He can talk to them. He can,
Yeah.
it shows that there's such a family component. It is a family business, but all these people have joined part of the family, and how proud he is of those people that work for him and what they do. Um, that part is that's what I would want to say is, hey, anyone want to do a tour, go to Freedot if you're
Yeah.
interested in selling kids on why they should be interested in careers in manufacturing. Have them go
It,
to a facility like that.
it always boggles my mind when I'm going on shop tours with owners or even high up leadership within an organization, and they don't know the people's names that they're introducing me to or that they're walking by. Um, I had a shop that I did a tour with a client of TCO Strategies, and the owner of the company only knew about 70% of the employees that worked for him. And he wondered why he had a turnover rate of 52%. And he actually blamed the high turnover rate on the fact that it was so transitory, right? There wasn't any staying power. He was getting new people in every week into his facility. He had to do a whole training class. Eh, To me, that was a huge opportunity to a affect some change, right? Because you got to know who your employees are, but you also have to then foster a healthier culture, right? And I know Roger does that. I know Oberg does that. Yeah, that's just something that we need to see more of in this industry.
But you also have to see where, most of the people that are NTBA members are making parts of parts that go into parts. So you
Right.
really don't know what is that end result. What are you making? You have this diagram of something you're making that's small. They may be making 10, 15, 100 of them. You don't really know sometimes where it's going to. But if you actually do know that, I mean, we
Hmm.
always talk about trying to say to students that, if you want to work in aerospace, medical, you want to save lives, you want to, help out the environment, working actually at one of our member companies could make that happen. Where I remember a tour at Cygnus Manufacturing, and they were showing me this part, and I'm like, oh, this is an interesting part. I don't know where it goes to. And they said, by the way, this part goes into defibrillators for children. And then they said is they actually had an individual whose life was saved by one of those defibrillators come and talk to their employees. And so that individual was able to say, you saved my life by what you're doing, by what you're making. I don't know about you, but I'm gonna make those parts, and I'm gonna make sure those parts are 100% perfect. If that's an opportunity, I'm gonna be saving lives.
Right.
Another story I remember of a manufacturer who was telling me that she was she was being delayed at the airport, and she started talking to someone next to her that was in army fatigues, and they started talking, and somehow during the conversation he mentioned about that the Jeep or something he was in was hit, and but their lives were saved because the way the Jeep was constructed, it saved their lives because of it was able to stand, and when it was, I think, it was put over on its side. There was a part or something that was put in that was able to save their lives. What happened is that company was a part of the manufacturer of that component that saved that person's life. And
That's
so
awesome.
they just started hugging and crying. But and that's what that's what the things that our companies are doing and manufacturers are doing. They are making parts that are just not these little things, but they're going into stuff that's going to help save lives, that's going to make people better. And if you let your staff and employees know that that's what they're doing and that's what they're doing for the greater good, how tremendous that would be. It's the same thing also. A lot of people talk about millennials and Gen Z. Well, guess what? They are more environmentally conscious. You
Right.
know how much recycling is done in a manufacturing facility? I mean, everything is recycled. I mean, the coolant is recycled. Every bit, there's no waste at a manufacturing facility,
Right.
especially at NTMA member shops. So, you know, letting people know about that and actually promoting that component is a way so that your culture of being environmentally friendly, when people don't think about that as manufacturing, that's another way to promote what you're doing and how you're going to be helping the environment, and that it's not just smokestacks what people
Right.
think about manufacturing.
Right. And you made a key pivot here for us, so I appreciate that, Bill. Um, you know, part of what you've done with the NTMA is work with young people in addition to working with the member companies of the NTMA. What are the young people outside of that connection to the greater good, right? And shops being able to connect individual job descriptions to that greater good or that sense of doing something to benefit society. What else are the young people that you talk to, that you work with, that you interact with? What are they looking for out of the companies they go work for as far as culture is concerned?
I think they want to be engaged. They want to know that they're just not a number, that they're there, they're appreciative, they're doing something, again, letting them know why they're doing this, because what it's going to lead to that. And I think that is an extremely important component, whether it's culture, whether about workforce development. It's people want to know what their pathway, the youngsters especially, they want to know what their pathway is. Why
Yeah.
are they doing this? Because what it's going to help them. It goes back to like my son building a bridge in middle school, and they're trying to build this bridge, and then they test it out to see if how long how it can withstand this ball going through it, if it's going to break or not break.
Hmm.
And but that's all that they do. The teacher never explained to them, this is why you're learning how to build this bridge, that you're testing it out, this is all about critical thinking. It's about, testing out a design, seeing if it will be working, then checking to see why it didn't work. And I think that's something that's important as well is, sometimes it's okay to let failure happen, but then work with them to show them how they will succeed the next time. They want to see innovation. They
Hmm.
want to see that they want to know that their suggestions are, they might put a suggestion up on the board, but they want to see, is it being acted upon, or or if it's not going to be acted upon, then why is that the case? Not just be ignored. It's the same
Yeah.
thing like all of us want is we put a complaint to Delta or someone because of a bad flight experience. We want them to respond to us to tell us we're sorry that happened, and we'll do better next time.
Yeah.
And, that's what people, they want to get that feedback. And I know that's hard. I mean, I'm part of, Gen X, and Gen X, we were that first part of group that really love feedback. We want to know what's happening. Well, it's just amplified now with
Yeah.
millennials and Gen Z. Your culture needs to give them feedback. You need to say to them, good job, or let's work with this and help you to improve.
Great point. Great point. Bill, what about some of those high school students that go into facilities as a intern or go in as an apprenticeship or junior apprenticeship or just uh, to get experience within a shop? What, because that's even a younger generation than some of the kids that we have in the trade school programs now. What is that very next generation looking for? The kids that are in middle school or high school right now. Do you have a sense for that?
Well, I think some of it is, I always, I have this stat that came and it's still, I think, active today. 64% of high school students will pick their career pathways based on their interests and experiences.
Mm,
So I always used to say to manufacturers that if they, if a student doesn't experience manufacturing machining, and they don't know, and they don't experience, they don't touch the machine, they don't see what's going on, they're not going to think that they can be a part of this industry.
yeah,
But they need to touch and feel and know that they can potentially do it. Give them that confidence that they can potentially do this. I love Manufacturing Day. It gives an opportunity for students to see what manufacturing is about. It changes the perception of manufacturing, but only for that moment in time. It doesn't do it the next day. The
yeah,
next day, the manufacturer needs to see the kids who are really excited about what they saw and work with the teacher and figure out how we can give them real life experiences. So, in real world experiences, so then they can have the confidence that they can do it. And that's a big component. And this generation doesn't have, we might see them on social media. It looks like they have all this confidence in the world. They're just playing a part, they're playing a
sure,
role.
yeah,
They don't have necessarily the confidence that they could work a CNC machine. I don't have the confidence I can work a CNC machine. Why? No one has taught me how to do it. I've
right,
tried. I even worked at a training center. I said, teach me how to do it. I want to learn. So I'm in awe with what a machinist can do. And I don't think I can necessarily do it because no one has spent that time to say, you can do it. So all those companies out there, they're worried about insurance. Oh my God, if a kid touches a machine, they're going to take a machete to it. I don't know what they're thinking that kids are going to do. Put gum all over it. They're going to draw over it. I don't know. Let them touch the machine. Let
yeah,
them see what is potential. You know what? And years later, they're going to know how to do speeds and feeds in their head, and they're going to
yeah,
feel excited about that opportunity. So I would say, don't be afraid of, oh my God, these kids are running around they're going to run around the shop. No,
yeah.
they're not. They're actually a little bit more better behaved than you think they are.
I get that. Bill, one of the things that as I'm working with more schools here in Arizona and Elevate Ed, the statewide program, one of the things that and we've known this, you and I have talked about this before, the parents of young people who are either interested in a career in manufacturing or show an aptitude for a career in manufacturing, but the parents are dissuading them. How can we use a cultural change in manufacturing to affect the mindset of parents? And what are some key steps that we need to take as an industry to make that happen?
I think the best thing about with parents is get the parents to get into the shops as well. I'm going to go
Okay.
back to Oberg Industry when they were selling their apprenticeship program that they created, or pre-apprenticeship program that they created. They had the students come and the parents come. So they had the students go that they were interested in a program, and they met with someone who is a 20-something who's been involved in their apprenticeship program to take them around and walk around.
Mm-hmm.
Then, for the parents, they had the person in the blue shirt and the khakis talk to them, and
Got
being
it.
able to say, hey, you know what? I just came back from my skiing vacation in Aspen, and I have, 2 cars, 2 kids, my wife, and I have my house and everything here. And by the way, your son or daughter is never going to have to pay for any education. Your son or daughter is going to learn, they're going to do this, and within 10, 15 years, going to be a manager, and they're going to be on their way to being very successful in what they're doing. And I'm going to make sure that happens. That's what needs to be done, is that they just need to get inside to the shop as well, the parents, to see what it actually is and what's going on. So having community open houses or inviting parents to come in the evening, to take a tour to see what the potential is, I think is as important as anything else, because, again, 64% of high school students will pick their jobs based on what they have for their skills and experiences. And parents are not going to recommend, their child to go work in manufacturing if they don't know what's behind your doors.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, Bill, let's do some shameless plugging of some great organizations out there. Give me 3, 4 organizations, school districts, community colleges that are doing these things right, as far as engaging the parents, engaging the students, showing healthy culture organizations in the manufacturing sector. Let's do some shameless plugging here.
Well, I mean, I'm going to go back and I'm going to shamelessly plug the Southwestern Pennsylvania Bots IQ program. They've been able to get an influx of support from the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You can tell I'm not originally from here, so I didn't say Commonwealth. Um, but and from the local workforce investments boards, but there's been a manufacturing ecosystem that's been developed around them that has enabled for the doors to open more education and training programs. So the students are not just building these bots, but they're truly learning about careers in manufacturing, and they're really utilizing social media to show the students, hey, we're just at this facility, or we have this internship program. The students, this is what they're learning. And then of course, when it's time for the competition, they can see what the parents can come down and root for their kids just the same way as they would at any sort of sporting event. And they can truly see what they've learned, and what they've applied during this project-based learning opportunity. But they've really utilized social media to get people to have a glimpse of what is happening, where the students are, and you're seeing these facilities and you're seeing the technology and what's out there. And I think is what's important. Again, it's, not being afraid. I know some companies can't do it because of Department of Defense contracts or whatever they might have,
Yeah,
but you still have to utilize social media as well to be able to, show, that engaging component that's out there, that, how high tech a facility is, how clean a facility is. And, that we're going to take care, if we're taking care of this facility, trust me, we're going to take care of, the people that are working here. So I would
sure.
say what they have done has been tremendous. Trying to think of some others that are out there. And there's also some school districts that are out there that have really truly listened to the community and
Hmm.
to the local industry, and they have changed their entire almost career, their CTE structure, to make sure that industry is involved. The Akron school system, for instance, have created these community learning centers and they're asking industry, help us to create these. What are the positions? What are you looking for? Help us to know what positions we need to fill and what skills that students need to learn. and they've completely, changed things around to give people in Akron, especially individuals who are economically disadvantaged, to be able to
Yeah.
show them where the opportunities are in trades. And they have, but it's been, and I'm going to go back again, it's been that ecosystem. It's not just the school. It's the school showing that they're interested in listening. It's the local workforce investment board. It's the local trade associations. It's the local colleges all getting together to be able to say is we got to help students learn and understand what these pathways are. But we also have to convince the manufacturers that they need to open their door, but they need to also be talking to teachers and
Yeah.
saying to them, this is the skills and this is what I need. And that's, for me, going back to culture, goes back to the fact is that if you don't allow your employees to go into the community,
Hmm.
to volunteer at STEM competitions, to help a school with that competition, to go into the school to talk about the opportunities to become work with it, what it means to be a precision machinist. To go to the school to say this and then say, hey, come and I'll show you what we actually do.
Yeah.
That, and it should not just be, the owner of the company. Let, those 20, 30-year-olds that are out there that are working for you, that are your stars, let your stars go and recruit your future stars. Let them be out there. Let them feel, if they're willing to talk about how wonderful it is to come work for you,
Yeah.
Then people are going to want to come work. They're going to want to recruit others. I mean, I just wrote an article for our January record that, 88% of employees rate, referral programs as the best source of applicants.
Interesting.
And that 70% of business agree that referrals will fit better in the culture that they have,
Yeah.
because people are going to want to recruit individuals that they want to work with. They're not going to recruit someone off the street that they don't know and they have no idea who they are, or if they know them and they don't like them, they're not going to say, hey, come work with us.
Yeah. No, I think
So
that's a powerful point, Bill. Referrals. That's big.
yeah, and that's where, I was, and again, from this, from the stats and stuff I have, referrals are 4 times more likely to stay than someone who's just, applying off the web.
Yeah.
That, and you invest, and we talked about before, you said, how much they invest in a new employee and doing the training. And if you're constantly having to put in and do new people because of turnover, not because of, someone leaving, there's reasons why people leave, but someone's going to stay if they've been invested, which is why with apprenticeship programs, that 95% of individuals who go through an apprenticeship program are going to be staying over 5 years at their company.
Wow.
And those people that were apprentices, remember, were mentored by individuals, and then hopefully they're going to want to mentor other people. And it goes
Well,
back to, and I'm just going to quickly, it goes back to the whole fact of, Carl Wangman of blessed memory, how much that he mentored me means that how much I want to mentor others, because I want to give back because of what he did to help me.
yeah. And Bill, you said something that sparked a question about investing and the stat of how many apprentices stay on to that 5 year and beyond mark. One of the things that I hear a lot from the manufacturers that I go into and I ask about apprenticeship programs, their biggest fear is that that they're going to train these apprentices, and the apprentice, as soon as they get information and training and knowledge, they're going to leave for more money. But it sounds like you're telling us that that's not actually the case.
It's not. And then, I mean, as I always say, is what happens if you don't train them and they stay?
Right.
What is that worker that you have? No, I mean, I know from companies that I've talked to, when that one apprentice out of 6 leaves, it's a painful thing that happens,
Right.
because you invest in that person and that's going to happen. But then look to yourself as, why did that person leave?
Right.
Why did that person decide to go somewhere else? If it's for money, yeah, sometimes it could be that person's going to go for money. But you know what's going to happen? That person's going to go somewhere else, for more money a year later if they're offered somewhere else.
Right.
But that individual who you showed that investment in, you show them what their pathway is going to be. You show them how you're going to help them because there's an articulation agreement with your apprenticeship program. So they've already earned X amount of credits toward an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. You show them if you stay with me, this is what's going to happen. Trust me, they're going to stay. They're going to want to be a part of that, because you show that investment in them, they're going to show that investment in you. The question is that person who left, did you show them why they're doing what they're doing, what their future is going to be, how you're going to help them with their continuing education, even after this apprenticeship program, or even during the apprenticeship program, how effective was the mentor? Was the mentor someone who on a daily basis was like, I love my job and I'm going to make sure everybody knows it? Or was it someone who was he was the person who always puts that suggestion in the box that's more negative than necessarily more helpful? You have to look at all those factors.
I love it. And so you just touched on something we haven't even talked about yet, and that's mentorship programs, right? How do you suggest that manufacturers, machine shops, as they do bring in apprentices and even young people into the organization out of trade school or out of college, university, whatever their educational pathway has been, how do you suggest they match these younger employees with the seasoned? How can you make that connection?
Well, I think one is a little bit about who your people are. Maybe you ask for volunteers, and being able to say, is someone interested in being a part of this? Because remember, the best machinist you have might not necessarily be the best teacher.
Sure.
And best instructor. But that person, who was a person who was potentially mentored in the past that's going to want to give back?
Yeah.
Who is that individual out there that gives positive suggestions on how things can be moved forward? Who is that individual when you're having a staff meeting, gives suggestions on how we can improve operations? Find that person who's invested in the company and the success of the company and make them the mentor, because then they're going to also invest in that individual, because they're going to see that individual not as someone who's potentially take my job, but as someone who's going to make the company better. So I always say is your best machinist is not going to necessarily be your best mentor. It's your best employee who shows up on time. And if they don't show up on time because they call because there was an actual reason why, they don't just say the dog ate my homework, but they give a reason. I'm sorry, and I'm willing to spend an extra 30 minutes to make up for that time. Those are the people that I would look at to be mentors. And that's, I think, a critical component. But then I also think that companies also need to be mentors to anyone in their community that's teaching machining. For instance, if you're a precision machine shop, any teacher, you should be that mentor. That teacher should have you on speed dial and vice versa as well. Because if that person knows that you're being helpful to them, they're going to recommend that their students go to work for you because you've been how helpful you've been to them. They're going to want to repay that. And it goes back to that part goes back to, I remember Phyllis Miller, who was in charge of the Bots IQ program here in Pittsburgh. She was also the HR person at Hamel Manufacturing. And teachers from involved in the program would always call her up and say, hey, I have a student that I think would be great for Hamel Manufacturing. Here's their information. Why don't you reach out to them and talk to them, or I'll connect you. These weren't just the schools that Hamel helped out directly, but because Phyllis was so dedicated to the program and they all knew her and they knew what she was, that if she's so dedicated to this STEM program, to helping them and grow this program, and this is where she works. Why would I want my students to go work at that place?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. That's huge. Well, Bill, do you have any parting thoughts, any parting comments for us before we wrap up today's episode?
First and foremost, James, again, thank you so much for this opportunity. I always enjoy, again, I always enjoy when we have a conversation. Last one we really truly had was at IMTS.
Right.
We had our own little happy hour there, and we talked a little bit about this and some other things, but it just goes back to the whole thing about culture.
Yeah.
That if your employees are recommending to other individuals to come work there, then you're doing something right. If your employees feel that they are secure in their job, that they're willing to mentor someone that's young,
Yeah.
then you know that they're doing something right. If they're investing in building pipeline programs, then they know that this company is looking to the future. And I think that those parts are what's important, which is why I always say to companies why it's valuable to be a part and an industry advisor for our Robotics League program, is because it shows, number one, is you're looking toward the future. It provides an opportunity for your employees to engage with these students, to be able to help them out, to maybe even show that they can teach and they can be a mentor to others. And it also helps with inside the community, that it shows that you have a commitment and you want to help out others. And then that makes people want to be like, oh yeah, I want to work at this place, or this, I look highly at this place. I'm going to want, if I'm going to be an engineer, I want to give a job to this company because of the fact I know that how they treat their employees, that they're going to do that same thing with a project I need them to do. And I think that is just so important. That it's not just, oh, I'm going to help these kids build this bot. No, you're building your company, you're standing in the community, and more importantly, you're going to be retaining the people that are currently working for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That very well said, Bill. And I do love our conversations, and thanks for being on today. For all of you listeners, thank you very much for tuning in to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. If you have any questions or comments about how to build a positive culture in the manufacturing workplace, please leave them in the comments of whatever platform you're listening to, or send me an email at jim@manufacturingculturepodcast.com. If you have any ideas for future guests, please email me. Remember to tune in to our next episode, where we will have another manufacturing leader share their cultural journey and 3 initiatives they've used to change their culture internally. Until then, thanks for listening.